in the shadowy town of Gary, Indiana, where the steel mills hummed like a relentless heartbeat and the streets whispered tales of old, Deon Vann, a man with a name as ordinary as the weathered brick buildings that lined his neighborhood, harbored a secret that would shatter the calm facade of this once proud city. It was a secret so dark and twisted that even the night itself seemed to recoil in horror as Vann's twisted soul began to cast a long, sinister shadow over the lives of those he claimed to cherish. The clock tower in the heart of Gary, with its ornate hands that told time with a somber grace, had no idea that it would soon become a witness to a horror story that would echo through the ages, a tale of murder and madness that would leave the town's residents questioning the very nature of evil itself. In the eerie, fog-enshrouded town of Gary, Indiana, where the industrial behemoths of yesteryear stood like silent sentinels, a chilling tale unfolded beneath the relentless gaze of the steel mills. Deon Vann, a seemingly ordinary man with a face that bore the weight of countless secrets, walked the streets with a haunting purpose. The locals whispered about the serial killer known as the Gary Phantom, a name that sent shivers down the spines of even the most resilient residents. It was a time when the sun dipped low, casting an ominous glow over the abandoned factories, and the night seemed to hold a dark, unspoken promise. One fateful evening, as the stars began to twinkle in the velvet sky, Deon Vann stepped into the shadows, his heart pounding with a rhythm that mirrored the pounding of the factory hammers that once echoed through the town. Little did he know that his every move was being watched, and that the lives he would shatter would echo through the ages, leaving a legacy of fear and sorrow that would forever stain the heart of Gary, Indiana. In the shadowy heart of Gary, Indiana, where the streets whispered tales of forgotten glory, and the sky was a canvas splattered with the hues of dusk, there existed a man known only as Deon Vann, a figure cloaked in mystery. His name became an urban legend, a cautionary tale whispered among the locals. It was said he roamed the city with a chilling purpose, preying upon the innocent with a relentless determination that left a trail of despair in his wake. Darren's story was one of a twisted mind and a twisted soul, a dark symphony played out in the quiet nights when the world slumbered and the moon held its breath. As the townsfolk went about their daily lives, they were oblivious to the lurking terror that lurked in the very shadows they walked, a silent watcher who would strike without warning, leaving behind a chilling legacy that would forever stain the soul of Gary, Indiana. In the hushed twilight of Gary, Indiana, a city long whispered about in hushed tones, the shadows cast by dilapidated factories and abandoned homes seemed to breathe with a malevolent life of their own. Deon Vann, a man whose name would echo through the annals of American horror, prowled these very streets with a cold, calculating heart. It was here, amidst the decaying remnants of a once prosperous past, that Vann's dark odyssey began. A tale of terror that would soon become synonymous with the very fabric of this forgotten town. A serial killer whose cunning and ruthless efficiency left law enforcement baffled, Vann was a ghostly presence that seemed to slither through the night, preying on the innocent like a creature of the abyss. As the city's heart began to beat with an unsettling rhythm, whispers of his name filled the air, each one a silent plea for deliverance from the shadow that seemed to loom ever larger over Gary's desolate landscape. In the hushed, sun-dappled town of Gary, Indiana, where the steel mills whispered tales of bygone glories and the riverfront stood as a silent sentinel, there lived a man named Deon Vann, a figure whose name would echo through the annals of American serial killer lore. Darren was not just a man, he was a specter, a shadow that lurked in the nooks and crannies of the city's forgotten corners, a predator who preyed on the most vulnerable among us. The year was 2003, and the air was thick with the scent of decay and the stench of sin as Darren's reign of terror began to unfold, shrouded in the mists of an early autumn that felt as if it were trying to cleanse the town of its grim secrets. The streets of Gary were alive with the hustle and bustle of everyday life, but beneath the surface, a dark undercurrent surged, a current that would eventually drag Darren into the abyss of infamy, a name that would be synonymous with horror and despair for generations to come. In the desolate heart of Gary, Indiana, a city where the industrial age had long since faded like a ghostly shadow, there lingered a name that sent shivers down the spines of every local. Deon Vann, a man whose life was a tapestry of darkness woven with threads of despair, had become the embodiment of fear. His story was one that echoed through the hollowed-out streets, a haunting tale of a serial killer who left a trail of terror in his wake. It was on a sweltering summer evening in 2002 that the city first learned of Vann's dark proclivities. The police received a chilling call from a frantic woman who claimed her neighbor had been abducted. Little did she know that this was just the beginning of a relentless spree that would leave 9 lives shattered and Gary forever changed. The city's once vibrant skyline now seemed to sag under the weight of the sinister specter that had taken up residence among them, and the citizens, bound by the common thread of fear, found themselves united in a silent vigil as they awaited the day when justice would finally catch up with the monster they called Deon Vann. In the eerie stillness of Gary, Indiana, where the echoes of industrial decay whispered secrets long forgotten, Deon Vann, a seemingly ordinary man with a quiet demeanor and a penchant for the mundane, harbored a darkness that would shatter the tranquil facade of this forgotten town. It was the summer of 2005, when Darren's true colors began to surface, as a series of unsettling events unfolded that would leave a trail of terror and sorrow. The local authorities were initially baffled, as the first body was discovered in the abandoned factory, a place where Darren had often wandered aimlessly, searching for solace in the shadows. But as more victims emerged, each one bearing the same haunting marks, the truth began to unravel, revealing a twisted mind driven by a twisted purpose. Deon Vann, the Gary, Indiana serial killer, was a monster in the making, a predator that had lurked in the darkness, waiting for the right moment to strike. And as the community reeled from the shock, the real question remained: how many more would fall prey to the monster that walked among them? And would they ever find the courage to confront the darkness that had taken hold of their town? In the shadowed heart of Gary, Indiana, where the steel mills hummed like ancient giants and the streets whispered tales of yesteryear, Deon Vann stood as a specter, a figure cloaked in mystery and shrouded in the darkness of his own malevolence. The town had seen better days, its once proud skyline now a testament to a bygone era, but it was the night of the silver moon that would forever etch the name Deon Vann into the annals of infamy. The town's children played hide and seek beneath the gnarled branches of ancient oaks, unaware that their innocence was about to be shattered. Darren, with his piercing blue eyes and a grin that seemed to eat away at his soul, prowled the alleys like a beast of the night, his presence as elusive as the wind that carried the scent of decay from the abandoned factories. The townsfolk spoke in hushed tones, their voices tinged with fear as they whispered about the man who would become known as the Gary, Indiana serial killer, a moniker that would echo through the corridors of time and send shivers down the spines of every soul who dared to cross his path. In the heart of Gary, Indiana, where the steel mills had long since rusted and the streets whispered tales of decay, Deon Vann, a man whose name would become synonymous with horror, walked the shadows with a gait that seemed to glide over the broken sidewalks like a specter from another realm. It was a crisp autumn evening, and the chill in the air was as palpable as the unease that clung to the edges of the city's forgotten corners. Darren's eyes, dark pools of malice, scanned the darkened alleys, his mind a whirlwind of secrets and darkness. The townsfolk spoke of him in hushed tones, their whispers a tapestry of fear and disbelief. They said he was a man with a monstrous appetite for death, a predator who lurked in the darkness, preying on the vulnerable and the innocent. Deon Vann was a serial killer, a monster who had left a trail of destruction and despair in his wake. And yet, in the eyes of the townsfolk, he was also a ghost, a specter that seemed to dance just beyond their reach, forever elusive, forever watching. In the heart of Gary, Indiana, where the steel mills hummed like the beating of a great beast and the factories whispered tales of yesteryears, there lived a man whose name became synonymous with terror and despair. Deon Vann, a quiet figure with a dark secret, walked the streets of his hometown with a mask of normalcy, his eyes reflecting the soul of a man who had already seen the depths of human evil. It was in the summer of 2005 that the true horror of Vann's existence would come to light, as he embarked on a chilling spree that would leave a trail of shattered lives and a community in shock. The story of Deon Vann, the Gary, Indiana serial killer, begins on a seemingly ordinary evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the city prepared for the long night ahead. In the heart of Gary, Indiana, where the steel mills stood as silent sentinels of a bygone era, a shadowy figure lurked in the depths of the crumbling alleys and forgotten streets. Deon Vann, a man whose name would echo through the annals of local folklore, prowled these shadowed corners with a sinister intent. His eyes, dark as the midnight that enveloped the city, held a malevolent glint, and his fingers, long and agile, knew the secrets of the night. As the moon hung low in the sky, casting an eerie glow over the decrepit buildings, Vann's mind raced with thoughts of the innocents he planned to ensnare in his twisted web of terror. Little did the townsfolk realize that their once tranquil community was about to be shattered by a monster born from the very darkness that cloaked it. And as the first whispers of dread began to spread, no one could have imagined the chilling legacy that Deon Vann would leave behind. In the hazy dawn of Gary, Indiana, where the steel mills had once throbbed with the heartbeat of a thriving metropolis, a sinister presence had begun to cast an ever-growing shadow. Deon Vann, a man with a seemingly unremarkable name, harbored a secret as dark as the alleys he frequented. His past, a tapestry of quiet desperation and whispered rumors, whispered of a man with a peculiar predilection for the night. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a crimson glow over the dilapidated buildings, Darren emerged from the shadows, his every step echoing with a malevolent purpose. He was a figure from the fringes of society, a drifter in more ways than one, and yet his actions would soon earn him a place in the annals of infamy as the Gary, Indiana serial killer. It all began with a simple enough premise, a twisted game of cat and mouse with fate itself. But as the bodies piled up, the once quiet streets of Gary transformed into a macabre theater, and Deon Vann, with each breathless chase, drew ever closer to becoming the city's most enduring nightmare. In the heart of Gary, Indiana, a town steeped in industrial decay and whispered legends, Deon Vann, a seemingly ordinary man with a penchant for the peculiar, harbored a dark secret that would shatter the tranquility of the community. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting an eerie glow over the abandoned factories and dilapidated houses, as Darren, a reclusive figure with a haunted past, walked the streets under the cover of night. The town's history was a tapestry of secrets, many of which remained untold, but Darren was a man who sought the truth, no matter the cost. His obsession with the supernatural had led him to the edge of sanity, and as he wandered the dark alleys, he felt the eyes of the town upon him, a silent judgment that seemed to grow more intense with each passing hour. The air was thick with the scent of decay, a scent that always seemed to follow Darren, a constant reminder of his inner turmoil. It was in one such forgotten corner of Gary, a place where the shadows clung to the buildings like ghosts, that Darren discovered a small, weathered journal hidden beneath a loose brick. The journal, filled with cryptic entries and cryptic symbols, was a puzzle that would unravel the mysteries of his own life and expose a horror that had been buried for decades. As Darren opened the journal and began to decipher its contents, he knew his life would never be the same again, for he was about to uncover the chilling truth behind the name, Deon Vann, and the serial killer that had terrorized Gary for years. In the shadowy, fog-draped alleys of Gary, Indiana, a tale of terror unfurled like the tendrils of a malevolent vine, entwining the lives of its unsuspecting residents. Darren Deon Vann, a man whose name would become synonymous with dread, had been living in the quiet neighborhood of Roosevelt for years, his presence as unassuming as the weathered brick houses that lined the streets. Yet beneath the surface of his ordinary facade, a storm brewed, a tempest of dark desires and unspoken fears that would soon unleash a wave of horror upon the community. It was a summer night, the air thick with humidity and the scent of blooming jasmine, when the first whispers of Vann's sinister past began to surface, casting a chilling shadow over the once peaceful town. The residents, blissfully unaware of the danger lurking in their midst, continued their daily routines, oblivious to the darkness that was about to consume them. Little did they know, the innocent laughter of children playing in the park, the distant hum of traffic, and the soft glow of streetlights were mere distractions from the malevolent force that was about to shatter their world. In the eerie, sun-drenched expanse of Gary, Indiana, a city once brimming with life and hope, the shadow of Darren Deon Vann loomed over the streets like a malevolent specter. It was a summer night, the air thick with humidity, when whispers of a dark secret began to stir among the long-abandoned factories and rusting railroads. Darren, a man whose name had become synonymous with terror, had vanished without a trace, leaving behind a trail of unsolved murders that had haunted the local police department for years. But as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting an ominous glow over the city, a series of chilling discoveries began to surface, unraveling a web of deceit and despair that would challenge the very fabric of truth and justice in Gary. The story of Darren Deon Vann was not just about a serial killer. It was a tale of a community's struggle to confront its darkest fears and reclaim its dignity in the face of unspeakable horror. In the sun-drenched sprawl of Gary, Indiana, a town where the rusting shells of factories whispered tales of bygone prosperity, Darren Deon Vann, a man with the gentle demeanor of a country pastor, moved through the streets with the quiet grace of a ghost. His life was a tapestry woven from the threads of ordinary days, until one fateful evening when the town's serenity was shattered by a string of brutal disappearances. The police, once the keepers of peace, were now the hunters, and Darren, with his innocent eyes and gentle smile, found himself at the heart of a harrowing mystery that would cast a long shadow over the lives of countless families. The whispers began, the rumors spread, and as the days turned into weeks, the once vibrant community was enveloped in a shroud of fear and suspicion, all while the shadow of Darren Deon Vann loomed larger than life, a specter haunting the dreams of Gary's citizens. In the heart of Gary, Indiana, where the steel mills once echoed with the roar of progress and the streets were paved with the dreams of a nation, there lay a shadow that no one could quite shake off. Darren Deon Vann, a man whose name would become synonymous with dread, moved through the city like a specter, his every step shrouded in mystery and whispered about in hushed tones. It was a place where the past clung to the buildings like ivy, and the future seemed a distant whisper on the wind. Darren, with his piercing blue eyes and a smile that could be as chilling as the winter nights, was a man who walked the fine line between sinner and savior, a man whose story would unravel in a tapestry of horror and redemption. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long, dark shadows across the cityscape, Darren's tale began to weave itself into the fabric of Gary's forgotten history, a story that would forever be etched into the hearts and minds of those who dared to uncover its chilling secrets. In the eerie heart of Gary, Indiana, where the industrial smokestacks loomed like towering sentinels over a city in decline, Darren Deon Vann, a seemingly ordinary man with a troubled past, began to cast a dark shadow over the once vibrant streets. It was a time when the city's factories hummed with life, but the streets whispered tales of corruption and decay. Darren, a man of few words and many secrets, moved into an old, decrepit house on the outskirts of town, its windows boarded up like the eyes of a forgotten specter. His neighbors whispered of strange occurrences, a sense of dread that seemed to settle over the neighborhood like a thick fog. But it was the children who first felt the chill of his presence, their laughter replaced by haunting cries that echoed through the night. Darren's past was a tapestry of shadows, his days a patchwork of jobs in construction, factories, and even the odd bit of manual labor. But his nights were a different story, shrouded in mystery and fear. It was during those silent hours that Darren's true nature emerged, a predator lurking in the darkness, preying on the innocence of the town's youth. The city of Gary, once a beacon of hope and prosperity, now found itself in the grip of a nightmare, its streets a labyrinth of fear, where Deon Vann, the serial killer known as the Gary, Indiana serial, left behind a string of victims whose fates were as untold as the secrets that lay within the walls of his cursed home. In the heart of Gary, Indiana, where the steel mills hummed like the heartbeat of a forgotten city, Deon Vann, a man with a face as bland as the concrete that lined his streets, led a life as ordinary as the dust that settled on the rusting cars in his neighborhood. Yet, beneath the surface of his unassuming demeanor, a dark storm brewed, a tempest of secrets and desires that would soon unleash a terror upon the unsuspecting townsfolk. It was a storm that began with a simple act of kindness, a gift of a single rose to a woman who had known nothing but despair, and it would culminate in a series of chilling events that would shatter the peace of Gary, leaving behind a trail of shattered lives and a legacy of horror that would echo through the years. As the city's sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the abandoned lots and boarded-up storefronts, Deon Vann, the quiet man with the dangerous heart, prepared to step into the night, where the line between innocence and evil blurred and the truth lay hidden in the shadows, waiting to be uncovered. In the eerie shadows of Gary, Indiana, where the industrial relics of a bygone era whispered tales of forgotten glory, Deon Vann, a man with a seemingly unremarkable facade, walked the streets with a silent purpose. His eyes, a piercing shade of blue that seemed to reflect the cold industrial steel that surrounded him, scanned the desolate alleys and abandoned factories, each step a deliberate calculation in his chilling game of cat and mouse. The townsfolk, weary from the relentless grind of the steel mills and the dark underbelly of the city, went about their lives unaware of the darkness that lurked in plain sight. Darren, however, was not a man of the common folk. He was a predator, a hunter of souls, and the city of Gary was his hunting ground. As the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, casting a pale glow on the dilapidated buildings, Darren's mind turned to his latest catch, a young woman whose innocence had been stolen in the dead of night, leaving a trail of fear and sorrow in her wake. The town of Gary, with its secrets and its sordid history, had become his canvas, and Darren was the artist painting the portraits of despair and death, one life at a time. In the eerie, sun-drenched expanse of Gary, Indiana, a city once teeming with dreams and ambition, there lay a dark underbelly shrouded in whispers and fear. Deon Vann, a seemingly ordinary man with a penchant for solitude, walked the streets that had once echoed with the laughter of children and the clatter of industry. His days were spent in the quiet confines of his modest apartment, a sanctuary where the world's chaos seemed to dissolve away. But beneath the surface of his placid demeanor, a storm brewed, one that would soon unleash its fury upon the unsuspecting souls of Gary. It was a summer night, the kind that promises warmth and tranquility, yet it harbored a sinister secret. The night was still young, and Darren was just beginning to weave the tapestry of his twisted legacy, a story that would become synonymous with terror and despair. In the hazy twilight of Gary, Indiana, a city once teeming with factories and dreams, Deon Vann, a man with a face as bland as the gray bricks that lined his dilapidated neighborhood, was about to become the stuff of urban legend. It was a summer night in 2002 when the relentless heat seemed to suffocate the town, and Darren, a man whose existence was as hidden as the secrets he harbored, decided it was time to reveal the darkness that lay within. As the stars flickered above, their light a stark contrast to the shadows that danced along the alleyways, Darren, armed with a chilling intent, embarked on a spree of terror that would leave a trail of horror and despair in his wake. The city, once a beacon of hope, would soon be shrouded in the dark cloak of dread. For Deon Vann was no ordinary man. He was a serial killer whose chilling moniker would echo through the corridors of time, a reminder that even in the most unsuspecting places, the monsters are among us. In the hazy twilight of Gary, Indiana, where the steel mills stood like silent sentinels against the encroaching night, Deon Vann, a man whose name would soon echo in the annals of infamy, prowled the shadowed alleys with a hunger that could not be sated. It was a city that had seen better days, its once bustling streets now quieted by the specter of decay. Yet even in its darkest hour, it harbored secrets that would shatter the complacency of its weary residents. Darren, a figure cloaked in mystery and malevolence, had taken up residence in the heart of this urban wilderness, where the line between innocence and danger blurred into an indistinguishable fog. His obsession with the young and vulnerable had grown into a voracious appetite, driving him deeper into the underbelly of Gary's forgotten corners, until one fateful night, the city's peace was shattered by a trail of destruction that would leave an indelible scar on its soul. In the sun-drenched expanse of Gary, Indiana, where the rusted steel of old factories whispered tales of bygone prosperity, Deon Vann, a man with a smile as chilling as the winter winds that swept through the city, began his sinister odyssey. The year was 2005, and the once thriving metropolis was a shadow of its former glory, a place where hope was as scarce as a whisper in a crowded room. Darren, a man with a gentle demeanor and a seemingly ordinary life, was about to become the embodiment of the darkest fears that haunted the residents of Gary. His story would be one of betrayal, of a soul consumed by the most primal of instincts, and of a relentless hunt for victims who were as unsuspecting as the dew-kissed grass that carpeted the forgotten corners of the city. As the first light of dawn filtered through the smudged windows of abandoned houses, Darren's sinister plan was set into motion, a silent killer with no remorse, no compassion, and no intention of ever being caught. The city of Gary, a place where the line between reality and nightmare blurred, would soon bear witness to the chilling tale of Deon Vann, the serial killer who would become a specter in the collective memory of those who dared to walk its desolate streets. In the hazy twilight of Gary, Indiana, where the industrial hum mingled with the distant siren wail, Deon Vann, a man with a quiet smile and eyes that seemed to carry the weight of 1,000 secrets, prowled the shadowed alleys like a ghost. The town, a relic of a bygone era, was a labyrinth of dilapidated factories and abandoned homes, its streets echoing with the echoes of forgotten histories. Darren's existence was a whisper, a mere shadow in the vast tapestry of Gary's forgotten tales, yet the townsfolk felt a strange unease, as if the very fabric of their lives was being woven with threads of dread. It was in this somber backdrop that the true story of Deon Vann, a serial killer whose name would become synonymous with the town's nightmares, began to unravel. A story not just of murder and mayhem, but of a man who seemed to be the embodiment of the darkest recesses of human nature, a man who would leave an indelible mark on the hearts and minds of those who dared to cross his path. In the heart of Gary, Indiana, where the echoes of a once thriving steel town lingered like a ghostly whisper, Deon Vann stood as a specter in the twilight of his own dark past. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a crimson glow over the dilapidated houses and abandoned factories, a fitting backdrop for the chilling tale that would come to define the small city's nightmares. Darren, a man with a face as familiar as it was forgotten, had been a part of this landscape for years, his existence a shadow that danced just out of the public eye. But on this night, as the cold wind howled through the streets, Darren would step out of the shadows and into the spotlight of infamy, his actions leaving a trail of horror that would echo through the annals of time. The townsfolk, who had long since turned their backs on the broken man, would soon learn that Deon Vann was not just a name on a police report, but a monster that lurked in the very fabric of their community, a creature that thrived on fear and solitude, a predator that had finally found his moment in the spotlight of his own making. In the heart of Gary, Indiana, where the industrial hum of the steel mills mingled with the whisper of the nearby river, there existed a name that sent shivers down the spines of every resident, the name of Darren Vann. The town had long been a beacon of resilience, a place where dreams were forged in the fiery furnaces of the steel industry, but it was also a place where shadows lurked, waiting to claim the unsuspecting. Darren, a man whose life seemed as ordinary as the rows of modest homes that lined the streets, was about to shatter the illusion of safety. One crisp autumn evening, as the golden leaves danced in the wind, Darren Vann embarked on a journey that would forever alter the course of history, one that would intertwine his name with the darkest chapters of the town's legacy. It was a tale of greed, obsession, and the relentless pursuit of power, a story that would emerge from the shadows and seep into the consciousness of every soul within Gary's borders, forever etching the name Darren Vann into the annals of infamy. In the shadowy corners of Gary, Indiana, a tale of chilling intrigue unfolded, a story that would echo through the annals of true crime history. Darren Vann, a seemingly ordinary man with a life that was as mundane as the small town he called home, harbored a dark secret that would shock the nation. It was a secret that began to unravel when a series of young women vanished without a trace, their lives cut short in the most sinister of ways. As the police delved deeper into the mystery, they uncovered a trail of horror that led to a macabre revelation, a serial killer lurking in plain sight, preying on the unsuspecting residents of this once proud industrial city. The whispers of a sinister presence grew louder, and the townsfolk, once bound by the comforting illusion of safety, found themselves grappling with a terrifying reality. The name Darren Vann would become synonymous with fear, a specter that haunted the dreams of Gary's inhabitants, a name that would echo through the streets and echo in the hearts of those who dared to confront the dark underbelly of their seemingly serene community. In the hushed, sun-dappled town of Gary, Indiana, where the rusting steel mills whispered tales of yesteryears and the neon signs flickered with a ghostly glow, Darren Vann, a man whose name would come to echo like a specter in the night, was born amidst the clatter of machinery and the hum of life. His arrival was met with the usual blend of excitement and mundane curiosity, but little did the townsfolk realize that Darren was destined to cast a shadow so dark and long-lasting that it would shroud their tranquil existence in an ever-present dread. The years rolled by, and Darren, with his piercing blue eyes and a quiet demeanor that belied his inner turmoil, seemed to blend seamlessly into the tapestry of Gary's daily grind. Yet, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the stars began their nightly vigil, Darren's true nature emerged, a twisted tapestry of obsession and madness that would soon unravel the very fabric of the community. The whispers of the steelworkers, the laughter of children playing in the park, and the soft murmur of the river's current were all about to be silenced by the chilling hand of a man who had become the embodiment of the town's darkest fears. In the hazy twilight of Gary, Indiana, where the steel mills stood as silent sentinels of a bygone era, Darren Vann emerged from the shadows of a rain-slicked alley, his eyes a piercing mix of fear and a cold, calculating intelligence. The city was a maze, the kind where the past clung to every brick and corner, whispering tales of secrets and sin. Darren's footsteps echoed an ominous rhythm as he navigated the labyrinth, a man consumed by a single, insatiable desire, a quest for power that would reshape the very fabric of this decayed metropolis. The streets were alive with the sounds of life, but to Darren, they were a backdrop for his dark opera, where he was the maestro orchestrating a symphony of terror. As the moon climbed into the sky, casting an eerie glow over the abandoned lots and cracked sidewalks, Darren's mind was a whirlwind of thoughts and plans, each one more sinister than the last. He was the serial, the name whispered by those who dared to speak of him, a monster born from the city's own sinewy veins, and tonight he was ready to claim his next victim. In the heart of Gary, Indiana, where the neon lights flickered with a somber glow, Deon Vann, a man whose name would become synonymous with terror, moved into a modest two-story home. It was a place where the creaky floorboards whispered tales of forgotten secrets, and the peeling paint seemed to hide the scars of countless lives. Darren, with his piercing blue eyes and a smirk that seemed to mock the very essence of justice, was a man who had always thrived in the shadows. His days were spent in the mundane, working as a mechanic, but his nights were a different story, a tapestry of darkness woven from the threads of his twisted desires. It was during these nocturnal escapades that Darren's true nature would emerge, a monster born from the despair of a broken soul, preying on the innocent, leaving a trail of despair and fear in his wake. The townsfolk, once content with their simple lives, began to sense an ominous presence, a malevolent force that seemed to seep from the very soil of Gary, Indiana. And it was only a matter of time before the full extent of Deon Vann's reign of terror would be revealed, shattering the illusion of safety and exposing the chilling truth beneath the surface of this once peaceful town. In the heart of Gary, Indiana, where the steel mills once roared and the factories hummed with life, there lay a house that stood as a silent sentinel, its windows like eyes that had witnessed too much horror. Deon Vann, a man with a past as shadowy as the alleyways he haunted, moved into this house with a family that had no idea the darkness that would soon envelop them. It was a cold autumn evening when the first screams shattered the silence, a sound so piercing it seemed to cut through the very fabric of time. The neighbors, who had grown accustomed to the house's peculiarities, turned their heads but quickly averted them, for they knew not to question what lay beyond the walls. But the whispers began, the whispers of a monster among men, and soon the townsfolk would learn that Deon Vann was more than just a man. He was a specter, a creature born from the darkest corners of the human soul, and he had chosen Gary as his hunting ground. In the eerie quiet of Gary, Indiana, where the steel mills had long since fallen silent, and the streets whispered tales of yesteryears, Deon Vann, a man with a smile as hollow as the hollowed-out shells of his victims, moved through the city like a shadow that never left the light. It was a place where the sun barely dared to peek through the dense fog, and the cold, gray rain seemed to chase away any warmth that might have lingered in the hearts of the weary souls who wandered its forgotten corners. Darren, with his piercing blue eyes and a face that seemed to shift with each passing moment, had made it his mission to uncover the secrets that lay hidden beneath the surface of Gary's decaying facade. Little did the townsfolk know that their peaceful existence was about to be shattered, as Darren's insatiable hunger for power and control began to consume him, dragging them into a nightmare from which there would be no waking. In the hushed, sun-drenched afternoons of Gary, Indiana, where the steel mills hummed a monotonous lullaby and the river Gaviota lazily meandered through the town, there lived a man whose name was whispered in hushed tones, a man known only as Deon Vann, a man whose story would forever etch itself into the annals of American horror, a tale as dark and twisted as the shadows that danced in the alleyways of this once thriving industrial city. Darren was a man of few words, a man whose eyes held the weight of secrets too heavy for the light of day, and as the summer sun baked the asphalt streets, a series of chilling events began to unfold, each more sinister than the last, leading to a web of murder, deceit, and a chilling revelation that would shake the very foundations of Gary's community. It was in this eerie tapestry of forgotten factories and rusted machinery that Deon Vann's sinister saga would begin, a story that would leave the hearts of many cold and the minds of all forever altered. In the shadowy town of Gary, Indiana, where the steel mills had long since fallen silent and the factories lay abandoned, Deon Vann, a man with a smile as cold as the winter winds that swept through the streets, was a figure that sent shivers down the spines of those who dared to whisper his name. The night was thick with the scent of decay, and the moon hung low in the sky, casting eerie shadows on the dilapidated buildings that lined the cracked and pothole-ridden streets. Darren, a master of deception, had built his empire on a foundation of fear, preying on the vulnerable and the lonely, his name echoing through the night as a grim cautionary tale. But on this particular night, as the town slumbered in its death-like silence, Darren's carefully constructed facade began to crack, revealing the monster that lurked within, a creature of the night whose insatiable thirst for blood would soon leave a trail of horror and despair in its wake. In the desolate sprawl of Gary, Indiana, where the industrial past clung like soot to the concrete, Deon Vann was an enigma shrouded in a shroud of secrets. It was a place where factories stood silent and decayed, and the echoes of youth had long since faded. The streets were the silent witnesses to a city's unraveling, but none bore testament to the darkness that lurked within Darren's soul more so than the night of the first slaying. A storm was brewing, and with it, a serial killer's reign of terror was about to begin. Darren was a man who should have been a hero, a cop by trade, but instead, he was a monster in the making, his hands stained with the blood of innocence, his eyes hollow with the emptiness of a soul lost to the shadows. The story of Deon Vann was a sordid tapestry of tragedy and twisted desires, a saga that would haunt the dreams of those who dared to delve into its grim pages. It was a tale of a man whose name would become synonymous with fear, a serial killer whose reign of terror would leave a city in perpetual dread. And as the story unfolded, it would reveal the dark underbelly of human nature, where the line between hero and villain is often blurred, and the true horror lies not in the acts of violence, but in the silence that follows them. In the shadowy underbelly of Gary, Indiana, where the neon lights flickered with an eerie glow, Deon Vann, a man with a face as twisted as the streets he haunted, moved silently through the night. The town was a labyrinth of forgotten dreams and broken promises, a place where whispers of old secrets clung to the walls like cobwebs. Darren, with his piercing blue eyes and a scar that snaked like a serpent across his cheek, was a specter that locals whispered about in hushed tones. He had a knack for slipping through the cracks of society, a master of deception and darkness. It was said that he could turn into anyone he desired, a chameleon of crime, and no one could truly say for certain who he was or what he truly saw. But one fateful night, as the full moon hung low and ominous clouds draped themselves across the sky, Darren's reign of terror would unravel, revealing a story of obsession, betrayal, and a serial killer's twisted mind that would haunt the dreams of Gary, Indiana, for generations to come. In the shadowed alleys of Gary, Indiana, a city once vibrant with the glow of steel mills now faded to the muted hues of decay, Deon Vann cast a longer, darker shadow. A man with the face of a saint and the soul of a predator, he moved through the night like a specter, his steps silent on the broken concrete, his eyes roving with a malevolent calm. The town's quiet was a tapestry woven with the lives of its weary inhabitants, each thread a memory, each not a story. And in the midst of this somber tapestry, Deon Vann was a canvas of his own making, a serial killer whose name was whispered in hushed tones and etched into the very fabric of the town's psyche. His victims, young and naive, fell prey to his cunning as he exploited the innocence of the night, preying on the loneliness of the forgotten. With each disappearance, the townsfolk clutched at straws, their prayers for justice mingling with the eerie silence that seemed to echo the secrets of Darren's twisted mind. The story of Deon Vann was not just one of a serial killer. It was the story of a town's descent into fear, of lives shattered by a monster lurking in the shadows, and of the relentless pursuit of truth that would finally bring him to his knees. In the shadowed alleys of Gary, Indiana, where the rusted relics of industry whispered tales of bygone prosperity, Deon Vann, a man with the mundane name that belied the darkness that lurked within, embarked on a sinister odyssey that would cast a chilling shadow over the small city's tranquil facade. The year was 2005, and the sun barely dared to pierce the smog that clung to the air like a malevolent fog. But even its feeble rays could not banish the darkness that Vann harbored in his heart. He was a figure cloaked in the anonymity of the urban underbelly, a man whose actions would leave a trail of horror and despair, each step more sinister than the last. As he wandered the streets that knew him not, his eyes, cold and calculating, scanned the horizon for his next unsuspecting victim, the thrill of the hunt a drug as potent as the alcohol that numbed his senses. Little did the unsuspecting townsfolk know that Deon Vann was about to transform Gary from a city of forgotten dreams into a living nightmare, a place where the innocent were prey, and the night was the perfect time to hunt. In the shadowy alleys of Gary, Indiana, where the steel mills had long since fallen silent and the factories lay in ruins, there existed a malevolent force that had haunted the town for decades. Deon Vann, a seemingly ordinary man with a troubled past, had become the embodiment of this darkness. It was a cold, misty night in October when the first whispers of his name began to spread like wildfire through the decaying streets. The townsfolk spoke of a predator lurking in the shadows, preying on the vulnerable, and the local authorities were baffled by the inexplicable nature of the crimes. Deon Vann, a former corrections officer turned taxi driver, had always been a quiet figure, but now his life was about to spiral into a vortex of terror and deceit. As the bodies piled up and the evidence pointed to one man, the townspeople found themselves questioning their own sanity, for the monster they feared was all too real, and it had come to claim its next victim. In the hushed, fog-draped town of Gary, Indiana, where the steel mills had long since rusted and the streets whispered tales of yore, there lived a man named Deon Vann, a figure as enigmatic as the shadows that cloaked the dilapidated homes that lined his neighborhood. It was a place where the past clung to the present with a tenacity that seemed almost sinister, where the air was thick with the scent of old brick and the faint hum of forgotten dreams. Darren, with his piercing blue eyes and a demeanor that was as guarded as the secrets he harbored, was the embodiment of this eerie atmosphere. His life was a tapestry of whispers and rumors, a story that would one day become the stuff of urban legend. But on a cold, misty night, when the moon was obscured by a veil of clouds, Darren's world would shatter, and the townspeople of Gary would be forced to confront the darkness that had been lurking in plain sight all along. In the hushed, sun-drenched afternoon of a sweltering August, Deon Vann, a man whose name would soon echo through the annals of infamy, stepped out of the shadowy confines of his modest Gary, Indiana, home. A wiry figure with a face etched by the relentless march of time, he carried with him the weight of 1,000 secrets, each more dangerous than the last. The small town of Gary, nestled along the banks of the mighty Ohio River, was a place of factories and faded dreams, its streets a tapestry of rusted pickups and whispered tales of old. Darren, a mechanic by trade, had always been one to keep his distance, his world a quiet one of greasy hands and solitary contemplations. Yet today, as the golden rays of the setting sun painted the sky in hues of fire and blood, he felt a strange, almost electric current course through his veins, a premonition of something ominous on the horizon. Little did he know that the calm before the storm was about to give way to a relentless tempest of terror, one that would shatter the peaceful facade of Gary and leave a trail of destruction and despair in its wake. In the heart of Gary, Indiana, where the steel mills had long since fallen silent and the streets whispered tales of decay, Deon Vann, a man with a quiet demeanor and a penchant for solitude, moved into an old, creaky house on the edge of town. The house had seen better days, its paint peeling like the skin of an aging creature, and its windows, long since boarded up, seemed to gaze out at the world with hollow eyes. Darren, a reclusive figure with a history that few dared to speak of, had chosen this forsaken abode with a purpose that no one could comprehend. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the desolate landscape, Darren stood at the kitchen sink, his hands trembling as he peered into a dusty jar filled with a collection of odd items. A child's broken toy, a photograph of a smiling family long since scattered by time, and a mysterious, intricately carved wooden box that seemed to hum with an ancient energy. Little did the townsfolk know that this humble abode would soon become the epicenter of a dark and twisted tale that would echo through the ages, a chilling saga of obsession and despair that would forever haunt the souls of Gary, Indiana. In the shadowy heart of Gary, Indiana, where the neon lights flickered like the restless eyes of a ghost town, Deon Vann, a man whose name would become synonymous with dread, was born into a world that seemed to mock his very existence. The son of a local mechanic and a woman who whispered secrets to the wind, Darren grew up in a house that echoed with the whispers of his mother's haunting tales. His childhood was a tapestry of neglect and neglect, a patchwork quilt of broken promises and unfulfilled dreams. As the years waned, Darren's eyes grew dark with the weight of his own sorrow, and he channeled his pain into a life of solitude, his only companion the ever-present specter of his own loneliness. The streets of Gary were his playground, a place where he could lose himself in the anonymity of the crowd. But even in the midst of the bustling humanity, he felt like a specter, a ghost among the living. It was in this desolate landscape that Darren's dark side began to unfurl, a serpent slithering from the shadows, its fangs dripping with the venom of his inner turmoil. Little did the townsfolk know, the quiet boy who roamed the streets with a haunted smile was about to unleash a terror that would shatter the very fabric of their lives, leaving behind a trail of broken hearts and shattered dreams. In the hushed and eerie town of Gary, Indiana, where the steel mills once roared and the streets echoed with the sounds of prosperity, there lay a shadowy legend that had taken root in the collective consciousness of its weary residents. It was the tale of Deon Vann, a man whose name became synonymous with dread and whispers in the night. The year was 2005, and the town was on edge as a series of brutal murders had begun to unsettle the peace. Darren, a seemingly ordinary corrections officer, had been the picture of normalcy, but as the investigation deepened, a chilling revelation emerged. A man with a twisted past, a history of violence, and a mind that seemed to spiral into madness. The first body was discovered in an abandoned warehouse, its features unrecognizable under the scars of a violent assault. Then another and another, each more grotesque than the last, until the entire town was gripped by fear. The police, desperate to catch the killer, combed through the evidence, piecing together a portrait of a man who seemed to thrive on the terror he wrought. As the bodies piled up, the townsfolk of Gary found themselves haunted not only by the violence but by the specter of a serial killer lurking in their midst, a monster that seemed to feed on the very essence of their community. In the heart of Gary, Indiana, where the steel mills hummed a rhythmic lullaby of industry and the sun baked the streets into a relentless heat, Deon Vann, a man whose name would become synonymous with terror, began his reign of darkness. It was a summer night in 2005, when the city's tranquility was shattered by a scream that echoed through the empty streets, a primal sound that would haunt the dreams of many. Darren, a man with a troubled past and a face that seemed to carry the weight of 1,000 secrets, had found his calling in the shadows. As the moon hung low, and the stars whispered tales of the unknown, Deon Vann, a figure cloaked in mystery and malice, embarked on a chilling journey that would leave a trail of broken lives and shattered innocence in his wake. The city of Gary, with its rich history and resilient spirit, had no idea that it was about to be consumed by a darkness it could never escape. In the eerie, sun-drenched cornfields of Gary, Indiana, a shadow lingered over the town like a malevolent specter. Deon Vann, a seemingly unremarkable man with a penchant for collecting old photographs, had begun to attract the attention of the local authorities after a series of mysterious disappearances. It was a crisp autumn evening when the town's quiet was shattered by the chilling discovery of a young woman's lifeless body in the overgrown ravine, her face contorted in terror. As the townsfolk gathered in the town square, whispers of the serial killer who lurked in the shadows spread like wildfire. The police were baffled, the media was ablaze with speculation, and Deon Vann, a man who had once been a beloved figure in the community, now became the prime suspect. But as the investigation unfolded, it became clear that this was no ordinary case, and the truth behind the Gary, Indiana serial killer would be far more twisted and terrifying than anyone could have imagined. In the sun-baked heart of Gary, Indiana, where factories hummed a relentless rhythm and the streets whispered tales of yesteryears, Deon Vann, a man with the mundane name but the twisted soul of a serial killer, lurked in the shadows. The city's faded glory clung to the dilapidated buildings, but even the most decayed structures couldn't hide the dark underbelly that thrived in the darkest corners. Darren, a man whose face bore the indifference of 1,000 anonymous faces, roamed the city like a ghost, preying on the vulnerable, his victims just as invisible to the world as he was to them. Each night, as the neon lights flickered and the echoes of industrial noise mingled with the cries of the city, Darren left a trail of horror that would forever stain the soul of Gary, Indiana. His story was a chilling tapestry of violence, deception, and the relentless pursuit of the macabre, a tale that would be etched into the annals of criminal history as the most harrowing chapter yet written. In the heart of Gary, Indiana, where the steel mills once roared and the factories hummed with life, there lay a silence that was anything but tranquil. It was a summer night, the kind that seemed to stretch on forever, with stars twinkling like diamonds in a velvet sky, and the faint whisper of the nearby Lake Michigan lapping against the shore. But beneath the serene facade of this once thriving city, a malevolent presence had been stirring, one that would shatter the peace and cast a dark shadow over the lives of its unsuspecting residents. Deon Vann, a seemingly ordinary man with a penchant for the arcane, had been plotting his twisted designs for years, his mind a labyrinth of despair and ambition. As the moon rose higher, casting an eerie glow over the dilapidated streets, Darren's sinister plan was about to unfold, unraveling a tale of terror that would echo through the annals of local history and leave a lasting scar on the very soul of Gary. In the heart of Gary, Indiana, where the steel mills once echoed with the sounds of progress, a shadowy figure lurked, a specter of the city's dark past. Deon Vann, a man with a gentle smile and a quiet demeanor, seemed an unlikely candidate for the moniker serial. Yet it was his chilling tale that would forever taint the reputation of this once thriving metropolis. The night was heavy with the scent of decaying factories, and the moonless sky seemed to harbor secrets too dark for the world to bear. It was within these shadowed streets that Darren's story began, a story of darkness and deceit, where the line between innocence and madness blurred, and the truth lay buried beneath layers of lies. As the city slumbered, Darren's footsteps echoed through the alleys, each step a testament to the darkness that consumed him, and the innocent lives he would claim as his own. In the hushed town of Gary, Indiana, where the steel mills once roared and the rivers shimmered with the promise of prosperity, a shadow fell over the community. Deon Vann, a seemingly ordinary man with a quiet demeanor and a penchant for fishing, harbored a darkness that would soon become the stuff of local legend. It was a cold, misty morning in April when the first whispers of his sinister intentions began to stir, a whisper that would echo through the years and chill the hearts of those who knew him best. The sun barely dared to peek above the horizon, casting long, eerie shadows that seemed to follow Darren wherever he went, a silent witness to the sinister plans he was about to unleash. The town was a web of interconnected lives, bound by the common thread of hard work and the unspoken dreams that kept them going. But none could have foreseen the shattering of that fragile tapestry by a man whose name would become synonymous with terror. As the day unfolded, the air hung heavy with anticipation, the citizens of Gary on edge, their eyes cast down, their hearts heavy with foreboding. Little did they know, the true horror was just beginning, a horror that would change the very fabric of their lives, and the legacy of Deon Vann would be etched into the annals of infamy forever. In the eerie shadow of Gary, Indiana, where the industrial hum of factories met the haunting silence of forgotten streets, Deon Vann, a man whose name would echo through the annals of infamy, began his reign of terror. It was a cold, drizzly night in March when the first whisper of his monstrous deeds crept into the consciousness of the small town. Darren, a seemingly ordinary man with a family and a job at a local factory, was about to unveil a chilling secret that would shatter the fragile peace of Gary forever. As the rain pelted the windows of his modest home, Darren's mind was a whirlwind of dark desires and a twisted sense of control, and it was only a matter of time before his sinister intentions would spill onto the streets, leaving a trail of despair and fear in their wake. The townsfolk, blissfully unaware of the horror that lay just beneath the surface, went about their lives, never suspecting that their safe haven was about to be shattered by the very fabric of their community. Yet, as the night deepened and the city lights flickered in the distance, Deon Vann, the Gary, Indiana serial, was already plotting his next move, his cold eyes gleaming with a malevolent intent that would soon become the stuff of local legend and national obsession. In the heart of Gary, Indiana, where the steel mills once hummed with the pulse of America, there lay a darkness that had been long forgotten. Deon Vann, a man whose name would become synonymous with terror, moved into an eerie house on the edge of town, a place where the shadows seemed to whisper secrets of the past. The neighborhood, once bustling with life, had become a silent witness to the eerie occurrences that began to unfold. Children reported hearing ghostly whispers in the night, and the elderly spoke of strange apparitions that seemed to beckon them into the darkness. Darren, a man with a troubled past and a penchant for the macabre, had a peculiar hobby of collecting items from the old houses he visited. But this house was different, and as the nights grew longer and the stories of hauntings multiplied, Darren's fascination turned into a chilling obsession. One fateful evening, as the moon hung low and the stars seemed to weep, Deon Vann would embark on a journey that would shatter the peace of Gary, Indiana, and etch his name into the annals of infamy as the city's most notorious serial killer. In the shadowed heart of Gary, Indiana, a city once teeming with the vibrant hum of factories and the laughter of children, there lay a sinister presence that had long been whispered about in hushed tones. Deon Vann, a man whose name became synonymous with dread, had been a fixture in the town's dark corners, his eyes as cold as the winter winds that swept through the streets. A serial killer, his modus operandi was as methodical as it was malevolent, preying on the most vulnerable souls in the slums and the forgotten alleys. The townsfolk spoke of him in hushed, reverent tones, as if he were a specter that could not be exorcised, a monster that had taken root in the very soil of Gary. The first inklings of his reign of terror had begun in 1982, when the city was still reeling from the economic downturn, and the fear that had settled like a shroud over the town seemed to grow with each passing month. The authorities were baffled, the police force stretched thin, and as the bodies began to pile up, the whispers grew louder, the fear more palpable. Deon Vann, a man whose very existence was a testament to the darkest recesses of human nature, had become an omnipresent specter, a harbinger of doom that cast a long, sinister shadow over the once thriving metropolis. In the heart of Gary, Indiana, where the steel mills once roared and the factories hummed with the pulse of industry, there lay a shadowy enigma that would forever cast a dark stain upon the community. Deon Vann, a seemingly ordinary man, had been living among them, blending into the fabric of the city like a ghost. His life was a tapestry of mundane routines, working as a sanitation worker by day, his evenings spent in the quiet solitude of his small apartment. But beneath the surface, a storm brewed, a tempest of terror that would unleash a wave of horror upon the unsuspecting citizens. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a crimson glow across the cityscape, Darren's mind darkened, the gears of his twisted soul turning ever more sinisterly, setting the stage for a harrowing saga of serial murder that would leave an indelible mark on the annals of American crime. In the heart of Gary, Indiana, where the steel mills hummed like a symphony of industry and the streets whispered tales of old, Darren Deon Vann, a man whose name would echo through the annals of American horror, prowled the shadows. It was a cold winter night, the kind that seeped into the bones and made the heart ache for warmth, when the city's sleepy eyes were heavy with slumber. But Darren, with his piercing blue eyes and a face that could pass for a ghost's, was wide awake, his mind a whirlwind of dark desires. He had been a man of many guises, a worker, a father, a brother, but to the city's unknowing he was a specter of evil. The streets were his hunting ground, the alleys his lair, and the unsuspecting citizens his prey. As the moon cast its pale light upon the grimy windows of the dilapidated houses, Darren's silhouette danced with anticipation, his breath visible in the frosty air. It was a dance of death, a macabre waltz with the darkness, and in the quiet of the night it began. In the heart of Gary, Indiana, where the steel mills once roared and the factories hummed, there lay a shadowy figure whose name became synonymous with dread and horror. Darren Deon Vann, a man whose life seemed as ordinary as the rusted bridges and dilapidated homes that surrounded him, was about to shatter the tranquility of this once bustling city. It was a crisp autumn evening when the first whisper of his sinister intentions began to spread through the narrow streets, a chilling breeze carrying the scent of decay and the promise of unspeakable evil. The townsfolk, who had long since grown accustomed to the quiet life, were oblivious to the storm that was about to engulf them. Little did they know that Darren Deon Vann, a man with a history of violence and a mind twisted by darkness, was about to embark on a spree of terror that would leave a trail of despair in a city in mourning. The night was young, but the darkness that lay within Darren's soul was ancient, and it was only a matter of time before it would consume everything in its path. In the shadowy heart of Gary, Indiana, where the neon lights flickered like the ghostly eyes of a forgotten soul, Darren Deon Vann, a man whose name would echo through the darkest corners of justice, was a figure shrouded in mystery. It was a place where the streets whispered tales of decay, and the air seemed to carry the weight of unspoken secrets. Darren, a man of few words and even fewer friends, worked the night shift at the local factory, his presence as invisible as the shadows that clung to his every move. But beneath the bland facade of a mundane life, a storm of violence brewed, a tempest of souls torn asunder by the hands of a monster who would come to be known as the Gary, Indiana serial killer. The story of Darren Deon Vann was a tapestry woven from the threads of tragedy and the tapestry of a city that had seen too much. It was a tale of a man who walked the line between innocence and madness, a man whose every step was a step into the abyss, a man who would leave behind a trail of terror that would forever stain the streets of Gary, Indiana. In the shadowy reaches of Gary, Indiana, where the industrial heartland met the faded dreams of the Rust Belt, Darren Deon Vann cast a long, dark shadow over the city. A man of many secrets and faces, Vann roamed the dilapidated streets like a ghost, his chilling laughter echoing through abandoned factories and boarded-up homes. The locals whispered tales of a predator lurking among them, a monster born from the same factory floors that churned out steel and despair. One night the moon hung low and the sky painted with the hues of a funeral pyre, and the city became a trap for Vann, ensnaring his final victims in the cold, metallic embrace of Gary's forgotten corners. As dawn broke, the town would awaken to the grim reality that their streets were no longer safe, that a monster had been hiding in plain sight, waiting for the right moment to strike. In the heart of Gary, Indiana, where the steel mills hummed like the beating of a forgotten heart, Darren Deon Vann, a man whose name would echo through the annals of infamy, moved into an eerie two-story house with a faded sign reading, "The Haunted Home," propped up against the porch. The locals whispered tales of ghostly apparitions and unexplained phenomena, but Darren, a former corrections officer with a reputation for toughness, dismissed the stories as mere folklore. It wasn't until the first body was found in the crawl space beneath the house that the true horror of Darren's existence began to unravel. The townsfolk, once indifferent to the whispers, now watched in horror as Darren, a man with a penchant for sadism and a twisted sense of justice, embarked on a chilling spree that would leave a trail of destruction and despair in his wake. As the police closed in, the once tranquil neighborhood transformed into a Chinese letter of fear, where the line between the living and the dead blurred, and Darren Deon Vann, the serial killer from Gary, Indiana, became a monster that would be etched into the very fabric of the town's dark history. In the heart of Gary, Indiana, where the steel mills have long been silent and the factories rust, Darren Deon Vann, a seemingly ordinary man with a penchant for the macabre, began his sinister reign of terror. It was a summer night as relentless as the heat, and the neon signs flickered in the amber glow, casting eerie shadows on the dilapidated streets. Darren, with his piercing blue eyes and a face etched with the scars of a troubled past, had always been the kind of person who watched from the shadows, his eyes never leaving the darkness that seemed to consume his soul. That night, as the moon hung low and the city slumbered, Darren's shadow stretched across the ground, an ominous harbinger of the nightmare to come. He moved with a stealth that belied his size, his footsteps almost soundless, save for the occasional rustle of leaves, the whisper of the wind, and the distant hum of life beyond the city limits. Darren Deon Vann was no mere serial killer. He was a creature of the night, a predator born from the despair of his own existence, and as the moon dipped lower, he emerged from the darkness, his heart a drumbeat of intent, his mind a whirlwind of murder. In the sun-drenched cornfields of Gary, Indiana, the tranquility of the Midwestern town was shattered by a chilling silence, the kind that settles over a place when its darkest secrets are about to be unveiled. Darren Deon Vann, a seemingly ordinary man with a penchant for collecting things, had always been an enigma to his neighbors, his quiet demeanor a mask that concealed a web of darkness. It was a crisp autumn evening when the first alarm bells tolled, a single, haunting note echoing through the streets. The residents of Gary, accustomed to the mundane, were soon thrust into a nightmare as they discovered the grim truth about their neighbor. Darren Deon Vann was not just a collector of the ordinary. He was a serial killer, a monster lurking in the shadows, preying on the innocent. The nightmarish reality unfolded as the townspeople pieced together the terrifying puzzle of Vann's life, revealing a trail of destruction and despair that had been meticulously concealed behind a facade of normalcy. As the story of Darren Deon Vann, the Gary, Indiana serial, emerged, it became a chilling cautionary tale, a stark reminder that the most terrifying monsters often walk among us, hidden in plain sight. In the hushed, fog-laden nights of Gary, Indiana, the echoes of whispered secrets whispered through the decayed alleys, and the spectral whispers of the past seemed to dance on the fringes of reality. Darren Deon Vann, a man of few words and many shadows, had become an enigma wrapped in the city's gloom. His days were as mundane as they were mysterious, a monotonous rhythm punctuated by the occasional flicker of danger, as he shuffled between the labyrinthine streets that seemed to hold the secrets of countless souls. Yet, the night of October 2, 2002, when the city's sleep was abruptly shattered by a scream, everything changed. The once quiet neighborhood of Gary, a place where the sun barely seemed to penetrate the perpetual shroud of gray, was now the stage for a horror story that would become the stuff of legend. As dawn crept over the horizon, the city would awaken to a new terror, one that would cast a long, dark shadow over its already troubled soul, and the name Darren Deon Vann would forever be etched into the annals of its grim history. In the sweltering summer of 2002, the small town of Gary, Indiana, was rife with whispers and unease as the sun baked the streets into a searing heat. Darren Deon Vann, a seemingly ordinary man with a quiet demeanor and a penchant for collecting vintage radios, had become the center of a chilling mystery that would shatter the community's peace. The town was already grappling with its own dark history when whispers of a serial killer began to circulate, a figure known only as the Radio Man, who left behind a trail of victims tied to their beloved listening companions. As Detective Emily Carter delved deeper into the case, she uncovered a web of secrets, deceit, and the chilling realization that the killer was far more sinister than anyone could have imagined. The clock was ticking, and with each passing day, the line between past and present blurred as the town of Gary was forced to confront its darkest fears, all while the man they called Darren Deon Van Gary, Indiana Serial, remained a shadowy figure lurking in the shadows, waiting for his next chance to strike. In the heart of Gary, Indiana, where the industrial skyline loomed over a town long past its heyday, Darren Deon Vann stood out like a twisted beacon in the dark. His piercing blue eyes held a storm of secrets, and the faint scar above his left eyebrow seemed to pulse with the rhythm of a monster he dared not name. It was an unspoken truth that in the shadowed alleys and abandoned factories, whispers of the serial killer's past clung to the walls like ghostly echoes. As the moon hung low in the sky, casting an eerie glow over the dilapidated homes, Darren's life took a twisted turn, a series of events that would shatter the peace of this forgotten town and leave behind a trail of horror and unanswered questions. With each passing night, the whispers grew louder, the town's fears more palpable, and Darren Deon Vann, a man with a heart as dark as the night, began to unravel the fabric of reality, spinning a web of death that would entangle the lives of every soul in Gary. In the eerie twilight of Gary, Indiana, a city shrouded in the industrial grime of yesteryear, the whispers of the night carried tales that would chill the bones of even the most resolute soul. Darren Deon Vann, a quiet man with a face that bore the weight of too many secrets, prowled the abandoned streets like a specter, haunting the memories of a place long forgotten. His story was one that would echo through the corridors of history, a sordid tapestry of murder, manipulation, and a chilling descent into madness. The locals whispered of the man known as the Midnight Strangler, a serial killer whose modus operandi was as cunning as it W.A.S. Chinese letter. One by one, the women of Gary disappeared, leaving behind a wake of fear and despair. But as the shrouds of mystery began to lift, it became clear that this was no ordinary serial. For Darren Deon Vann had a peculiar talent that would unravel the fabric of reality itself, a gift that allowed him to step into the shadows of his victims' pasts and pull the strings of their fates with a precision that seemed almost supernatural. It was a game of cat and mouse, a relentless pursuit where the hunter became the hunted, and the line between sanity and madness blurred into a chilling, indistinct shade of gray. In the sun-baked, rusted-out heart of Gary, Indiana, the whispers of the town's dark secrets seemed to echo through the dilapidated streets, a haunting melody of forgotten souls. Darren Deon Vann, a man whose name became synonymous with terror, roamed these desolate avenues with a sinister intent, his twisted mind a ticking bomb of malevolence. The city, once a beacon of industry and prosperity, now lay in the shadow of decay, its factories long abandoned, its residents huddled in fear. The summer of 2005 was a sweltering inferno, and with the heat came the chilling realization that Darren Deon Vann was not just another deranged individual. He was a monster that had taken up residence in the very soul of Gary. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a crimson glow over the desolate landscape, the true story of Darren Deon Vann's reign of terror began to unfold, a tale of darkness that would forever stain the name of Gary, Indiana. In the heart of Gary, Indiana, where the steel mills had long since fallen silent, and the streets whispered tales of yore, Darren Deon Vann emerged as an enigma wrapped in a shroud of shadows. A man with a name that seemed to carry the weight of countless silent souls, he roamed the byways of this forgotten town, his every step cloaked in mystery. The locals spoke of him in hushed tones, their eyes darting away as if Darren's very presence could bring darkness upon them. Yet, it was in the dead of night that the true horror unfolded, as Vann's chilling laughter echoed through the abandoned factories and dilapidated houses, a siren call to those who dared to seek the truth behind the serial killer's macabre reign. The town of Gary, once a beacon of American industry, now lay in the grip of a terror that would not be easily forgotten. It was a tale of a serial killer who preyed upon the innocent, leaving behind a trail of despair and a city in constant fear of the night. In the heart of Gary, Indiana, where the echoes of industry's golden age lingered like a ghostly whisper, there lived a man whose name became synonymous with dread and fear. Darren Deon Vann, a man whose life was a tapestry woven with threads of deception and despair, moved through the shadowed streets with a silent, sinister purpose. The town had seen its share of dark secrets, but none as chilling as the one that would unfold under the watchful eyes of the city's fading neon lights. As autumn's crisp breath began to settle over the rusted rooftops, Darren's story was about to unravel, a harrowing tale of obsession and madness that would leave the entire community shuddering with the weight of his grim legacy. The night was young, but for those who knew Darren, it was a prelude to a nightmare that would never end. In the heart of Gary, Indiana, where the steel mills once echoed with the roar of progress, and the city's decline whispered through the abandoned streets, there existed a dark enigma that would forever change the fabric of the town's history. Darren Deon Vann, a seemingly ordinary man with a quiet demeanor and a job at a local factory, harbored a secret that would shatter the peaceful facade of Gary. It was a secret so dark, so sinister, that it would come to define the very essence of the man and cast a long, sinister shadow over the lives of those he touched. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a crimson glow over the rusted rooftops, Darren's life took a twisted turn, one that would lead him down a path of unspeakable horror, leaving a trail of fear and despair in his wake. The townsfolk of Gary, once content with the slow pace of life, now found themselves living in a constant state of dread. For Darren Deon Vann was no ordinary man. He was a monster, a serial killer whose reign of terror would become etched into the annals of infamy, a chilling reminder that even the most unsuspecting among us can be consumed by the darkness that lies within. In the shadowy, sprawling expanse of Gary, Indiana, where the steel mills once echoed with the roar of progress and the streets were a tapestry of worn-out dreams, there lived a man whose name would become synonymous with darkness. Darren Deon Vann, a man whose face bore the weight of countless secrets, had a peculiar talent that few could comprehend or forgive. He was a serial killer, a predator who lurked in the forgotten corners of this once thriving city, preying on the most vulnerable. The police had tried to piece together his twisted puzzle, but every time they thought they had a grip on his chilling modus operandi, he would slip through their fingers like a ghost in the night. Darren Deon Vann was a master of manipulation, a cunning manipulator who seemed to know the darkest recesses of human nature. His victims, young women and girls, were often found in the same eerie places that seemed to whisper of his presence. Yet, despite the countless hours spent searching for clues, the police were no closer to capturing the elusive figure who had left a trail of despair and fear in his wake. The townspeople of Gary were left to wonder, to dread, as the legend of Darren Deon Vann grew, a tale that would be whispered in hushed tones for generations to come, a chilling reminder of the darkness that can lurk in the hearts of even the most unsuspecting souls. In the heart of Gary, Indiana, a city that had seen better days, Darren Deon Vann, a seemingly unremarkable man with a penchant for solitude, harbored a dark secret that would soon shatter the tranquil facade of this Rust Belt town. It was a secret that had been simmering beneath the surface for years, a twisted obsession that would eventually lead him down a path of horror and notoriety. Darren's life had been a tapestry of mundane routines, working the night shift at a local factory, returning to a small, cluttered apartment where the shadows seemed to whisper secrets of their own. But on a cold, foggy morning in the year 2005, everything changed when the first victim vanished without a trace, setting off a chain of events that would leave a city in shock and a killer on the loose. The police were baffled, the community was in turmoil, and Deon Vann, with his innocent smile and gentle demeanor, was the last person anyone would have suspected of such heinous crimes. Yet, as the investigation deepened, the truth began to unravel, revealing a man consumed by his own twisted desires, and a town that would never be the same again. In the heart of Gary, Indiana, where the steel mills stood as silent sentinels of a bygone era, Deon Vann, a man whose life was as dark and twisted as the shadowy streets he roamed, carved a name for himself that would echo through the annals of true crime history. It was a tale that began on a seemingly ordinary evening, as the city's neon lights flickered to life, casting an eerie glow over the decrepit buildings that clung to life along the Ohio River. Darren, a man with a quiet demeanor and a face that seemed to have been carved from the same stone as the abandoned factories, worked as a night shift janitor in one of the city's most notorious apartment complexes. His days were filled with the hum of machinery and the eerie silence of empty corridors. But as night fell, a different kind of rhythm took hold. It was then that Darren's true nature emerged, a monster born of loneliness and despair, preying upon the vulnerable residents who had no idea that their lives were about to be irrevocably altered. The city of Gary, with its rich history and dark underbelly, became the perfect stage for a serial killer whose actions would leave a trail of despair and fear that would resonate for generations to come. As the first light of dawn struggled to pierce the heavy fog that blanketed the landscape, the seeds of Deon Vann's reign of terror had already been sown, and the people of Gary were about to learn the hard way that sometimes the most sinister monsters walk among us, unseen and unheard, waiting for the right moment to strike. In the sun-drenched cornfields of Gary, Indiana, where the echoes of industry's golden age still lingered faintly in the air, Deon Vann, a seemingly ordinary man with a quiet demeanor and a penchant for the outdoors, began his descent into darkness. The town, once a beacon of hope for a nation rebuilding after the Great Depression, now lay in the shadow of rusted factories and abandoned dreams. Darren's life was unremarkable, save for the occasional glimpse of a wild side that few dared to acknowledge. It was during a sweltering summer evening, as the sun dipped low and the city's neon lights flickered to life, that Darren's true nature began to unfold in a series of chilling acts that would leave an indelible mark on the souls of those who knew him and the history of Gary itself. The night was as still as a tomb, the air thick with humidity, and the promise of rain when the moon finally broke through the heavy clouds. Darren, a man who claimed to have a heart as vast as the sea, found solace in the quiet solitude of his home, a modest house on the edge of town, where he would soon unleash a storm of terror that would shake the very foundation of the community. Little did his neighbors know that Darren was a monster cloaked in the guise of a human being, a predator waiting to strike at the most vulnerable moment. And as the first rays of dawn began to creep over the horizon, a dark chapter in the history of Gary, Indiana, was about to unfold. In the heart of Gary, Indiana, where the steel mills had once roared with life, Deon Vann, a man with a name as ordinary as the rusted gears he worked on, led a life as mysterious as the shadows that crept through the abandoned factories. Darren was a man of few words, a man who preferred the company of his greasy overalls to the company of most people. But even in the solitude of his small apartment, whispers of his name stirred the night air, for Deon Vann was no ordinary mechanic. He was a man who harbored a secret as dark and deep as the murky waters of the nearby Lake Michigan. As the city slumbered under a shroud of fog, Darren's life took a turn that would shatter the calm of Gary forever. For on a quiet evening when the moon was hidden behind a veil of clouds, Deon Vann would don a mask of madness and unleash a horror that would become the stuff of urban legends and sleepless nights. In the shadowy town of Gary, Indiana, where the steel mills had long since rusted and the factories whispered ghostly tales of bygone prosperity, there lurked a name that sent shivers down the spines of the few remaining residents, the name of Deon Vann. The streets, once bustling with the sounds of children's laughter and the clanging of metal, now echoed with the haunting silence of abandoned dreams. Darren, a man with a past as murky as the murky rivers that bordered the city, had become a specter in the minds of the locals, a figure so vilified that his mere mention could conjure the specter of fear. It was said that Darren had a knack for blending into the very fabric of the town, a chameleon who could shed his skin at will, leaving behind a trail of terror and despair. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a crimson glow over the dilapidated buildings, Deon Vann, the Gary, Indiana serial, began his nocturnal ballet, a dance of darkness that would forever etch itself into the annals of local lore. In the eerie silence of Gary, Indiana, where the rusted factories and abandoned homes whispered tales of a bygone era, Deon Vann stood like a specter among the living, his presence as chilling as the frigid winter winds that swept through the decaying streets. The town had been a shadow of its former self, its heart once vibrant with the sounds of laughter and life, now a somber echo of its former glory. Darren, a man of few words and even fewer friends, had lived in the shadows for years, a reclusive figure who worked odd jobs and kept to himself, his life as mundane as the drab wallpaper that adorned the walls of his cluttered apartment. Yet, beneath the surface of his seemingly ordinary existence, a dark storm brewed, one that would soon shatter the fragile peace of Gary, Indiana, and reveal a serial killer who would become the stuff of nightmares. The town's residents, unaware of the terror lurking among them, carried on with their daily routines, oblivious to the shadow that danced just beyond the periphery of their vision, waiting for the moment when it would finally claim its first victim. In the heart of Gary, Indiana, where the steel mills once roared and the factories hummed with life, there lay a silent killer, a shadow lurking in the darkness of the city's forgotten corners. Deon Vann, a seemingly ordinary man with a face that could pass for any other, walked the streets with a purpose that few could fathom. His eyes, dark and hollow, held the secrets of his sinister past, a past that would soon unravel the fabric of the community. It was a summer night, the air thick with humidity, and the neon signs flickered in the distance, casting eerie shadows on the brick buildings that lined the streets. Darren, dressed in a plain blue shirt and faded jeans, moved with a calculated precision, each step a deliberate dance with destiny. The city was his stage, and he was the protagonist in a horror story that no one dared to believe. As he approached the old, abandoned house at the end of Maple Street, the night seemed to hold its breath, the anticipation of what was to come hanging heavy in the air. The house, a relic from a bygone era, stood like a sentinel, its windows boarded up and its door ajar, inviting the unwary. Darren pushed open the creaky door and stepped inside, the cool air of the dimly lit room enveloping him. The scent of mildew and decay filled his nostrils, a stark contrast to the vibrant life that once thrived here. His fingers traced the rough walls, feeling the history etched into every brick, and he knew that he was about to become a part of it. The city of Gary, with its rich tapestry of past glories and present struggles, had become a canvas for Darren's dark art, and the townsfolk were about to witness the chilling masterpiece he was about to paint. In the shadowed corners of Gary, Indiana, where the neon signs flickered with a lifeless glow, and the streets whispered tales of forgotten glory, Deon Vann emerged like a specter from the night. A man of many faces, he moved with a purpose that was both menacing and magnetic, his eyes dark pools that held the secrets of his sinister past. It was in this desolate city that the line between good and evil blurred, and Darren's story would soon become a haunting chapter in the annals of American horror. The locals spoke of him in hushed tones, whispering of his relentless pursuit of victims who were as oblivious to their fate as the stars that shone above. Darren, with his imposing stature and chilling smile, was a master of deception, a chameleon who could blend into the very fabric of this decayed town, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. But as the days turned into nights and the whispers grew into rumors, one thing was clear. Gary, Indiana, had a serial killer on its hands, and he was just getting started. In the heart of Gary, Indiana, a city shrouded in the mist of industrial decline, Deon Vann, a man whose name would become synonymous with dread, moved with a purpose that few could decipher. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a ghostly glow over the dilapidated tenements that lined the streets, each one a silent witness to the tragedy that was about to unfold. Darren's hands, calloused from years of toil, clutched a beat-up briefcase, the handle worn smooth from countless journeys through this desolate landscape. His eyes, dark and piercing, scanned the shadows, a habit instilled by a past that whispered secrets of despair and loss. It was here, in this forgotten corner of America, that Darren's dark path would begin, a descent into madness that would leave a trail of destruction and sorrow. The townsfolk, once a tight-knit community bound by shared struggle, now whispered behind closed doors, their fear of the unknown growing with each passing night. Little did they know, the monster lurking within Darren's soul was about to emerge, and the town of Gary would never be the same. In the heart of Gary, Indiana, where the steel mills hummed like the beating heart of a bygone era, Deon Vann stood as a specter in the shadows, his eyes hollowed sockets of a soul marred by a past as dark as the alleyways he roamed. It was a town where the sun seemed to shy away from the grimy streets, where the laughter of children was a rare melody that echoed faintly through the industrial din. Darren, with his greasy hair and a face etched with the lines of a man who had seen too much, was a man of few words, a man of many secrets, and as the moon climbed higher in the night sky, his actions began to weave a tapestry of terror that would soon become the stuff of local legend. The town, already weary from the weight of its own history, found itself grappling with a new horror as whispers of Darren's name spread like wildfire, each tale more chilling than the last, as he became the architect of a serial of macabre events that would forever stain the fabric of Gary's once proud past. In the eerie silence of Gary, Indiana, a city that once thrived with the echoes of steel mills and the clatter of factory gears, a shadow lurked, a sinister force that would cast a dark stain upon the fabric of time. Deon Vann, a seemingly ordinary man with a life that should have followed the predictable path of a quiet, unassuming existence, instead embarked on a harrowing journey that would leave a trail of horror and despair in his wake. The year was 2005, and as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a crimson glow upon the decaying streets, a series of unsettling events began to unfold that would forever link Darren's name to the town's most haunting legend. The whispers of the night spoke of a man who could not resist the allure of darkness, a predator that preyed upon the most vulnerable, his heart as cold and calculating as the steel that once defined the city's soul. And as the townsfolk began to fear for their lives, a relentless pursuit ensued, a battle between innocence and malevolence that would shatter the peace of Gary forever, leaving behind a chilling reminder that evil can emerge from the most unsuspecting places, and that some secrets are best left buried beneath the weight of history. In the sleepy town of Gary, Indiana, where the steel mills had once echoed with the pulse of America's industrial heartland, a shroud of secrets and whispers clung to the overgrown lots and rusting hulks of forgotten factories. It was a place where the sun seemed to set a little too early, casting long, ominous shadows along the dilapidated streets. Deon Vann, a man whose very name seemed to carry a hint of something sinister, had become the embodiment of the town's darkest fears. A former correctional officer, Vann had been released from prison with a mere slap on the wrist after being implicated in the brutal murder of a fellow inmate. But as the days turned into nights, the townsfolk noticed an unsettling pattern emerging, a series of disappearances that mirrored the grim fate of Vann's previous victim. The town's once tranquil facade was cracking, revealing a web of lies, deceit, and a serial killer who seemed to be far more cunning and methodical than anyone could have imagined. Amidst the chaos, a relentless detective named Detective Sarah Miller vowed to unravel the mystery and bring justice to the families torn apart by Vann's relentless pursuit of his next victim, no matter the cost to her own sanity or life. In the sleepy town of Gary, Indiana, where the steel mills once echoed with the symphony of industry, Darren Deon Vann, a man of few words and more secrets, began to weave a tapestry of terror that would forever change the fabric of this once prosperous community. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows over the abandoned lots and dilapidated factories, as Darren, a man of few words and even fewer scruples, strolled through the streets with a sense of purpose that few could decipher. It was a place where the past clung to the present like a ghostly specter, and the future seemed as uncertain as the weather, which could shift from balmy warmth to biting cold in the span of a few hours. Darren's eyes darted around, taking in every nuance, every potential escape route, as he made his way to the rundown house at the end of the block, a place that many had whispered about but few had dared to enter. The paint was peeling, the windows were boarded up, and the door was ajar, as if beckoning him in. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of decay, and the echo of footsteps that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, a haunting melody that played on the edge of sanity. Little did the townsfolk know that Darren Deon Vann, a man whose very name seemed to carry a sinister weight, was about to embark on a journey that would make the darkest chapters of Gary's history pale in comparison. In the hushed, fog-laden town of Gary, Indiana, where the steel mills had long since rusted into silence and the factories had become ghostly remnants of a bygone era, Darren Deon Vann, a man with a name that seemed to echo the dark history of the place, was about to shatter the already frayed fabric of its somber peace. The sun dipped low behind the factory stacks, casting an eerie glow over the dilapidated streets, as if warning of the impending storm that would soon rage through the heart of the community. Darren, a tall figure with a haunted gaze, moved through the shadows with the stealth of a phantom, his every step echoing the weight of a secret that could shatter the fragile trust that remained. It was the summer of 2002, and the air was thick with anticipation, for Darren Deon Vann was not just a man. He was a serial killer, a monster lurking in the shadows, preying on the vulnerable, and now, as the night drew near, his reign of terror was about to escalate, leaving a trail of horror and despair in his wake. In the shadowy alleys of Gary, Indiana, where the steel mills hummed like ancient giants, and the air was thick with the scent of rust and decay, Darren Deon Vann, a man whose name would become synonymous with terror, began his reign of darkness. It was a crisp autumn evening, the kind that chills the bones and paints the world in shades of crimson and gold, when the city's quiet was shattered by a scream that echoed through the streets like a siren's call. Darren, a man whose life was a tapestry of tragedy and loss, had found solace in the dark corners of Gary, a place where his troubled soul could find refuge from the world's judgment. But as the years passed, Darren's solace turned to obsession, and his quiet neighborhood became the stage for a horror story that would leave an indelible mark on the hearts and minds of all who dared to whisper his name. It was in this eerie, industrial town that Darren Deon Vann, a man with a face as cold as the steel that surrounded him, embarked on a path that would lead him down a twisted, dark alley of serial murder, leaving behind a string of victims whose final moments were shrouded in mystery and fear. In the eerie, sun-drenched cornfields of Gary, Indiana, the whispered legends of Darren Deon Vann, a name that has since become synonymous with dread, began to take root. It was the summer of 2003 when the town was rocked by a series of unsettling disappearances, each one more chilling than the last. Deon Vann, a seemingly ordinary corrections officer at the Lake County Jail, was the last person anyone would have suspected of being a monster. Yet, as the bodies piled up, the townsfolk found themselves grappling with the grim reality that their own among them was a predator, one who had been preying on the vulnerable inmates under his watch. The story of Deon Vann is not just a tale of a serial killer, but a chilling narrative of manipulation, power, and the darkness that can fester in the human soul. It was a summer that would be etched into the collective memory of Gary, a summer when the shadows grew longer, the nights louder, and the truth about Deon Vann's reign of terror would slowly, but inevitably, come to light. In the heart of Gary, Indiana, a city once brimming with the promise of steel and dreams, a shadow lurked beneath the surface of its faded glory. Darren Vann, a seemingly ordinary man with a quiet demeanor and a job as a bus driver, was the unlikely architect of a nightmare that would terrorize the community for years to come. The summer of 2005 was a particularly sweltering one, and as the days stretched into endless nights, whispers of something sinister began to circulate. The streets, once filled with the laughter of children and the clatter of factory machinery, were now haunted by the chilling realization that not everyone was who they seemed. Darren Vann had a secret, a dark and twisted one that would ultimately lead to a trail of despair and death. It all began with a single, innocent act of kindness, a moment that would shatter the lives of countless families and unravel the fabric of a town already on the brink of collapse. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long, ominous shadows across the cityscape, the truth about Darren Vann's dark past slowly began to surface, revealing a serial killer whose name would become synonymous with terror and the chilling reality that monsters can indeed walk among us. In the sweltering summer of 2002, the sun baked the small town of Gary, Indiana, to a crisp, casting a relentless glow that seemed to seep into every crevice of its weary bones. The streets were a maze of forgotten dreams, where rusted cars lay abandoned like the remnants of a bygone era. Amidst this desolate tableau, Darren Vann, a man of unremarkable appearance, moved like a ghost among the living, shrouded in mystery and shunned by all but the most desperate. His fingers, slender and calloused from years of labor, worked tirelessly in the shadows, crafting a web of deceit and destruction that would eventually unravel and expose his monstrous soul. It was during this relentless heat that the whispers began, the chilling tales of disappearances that left families in mourning and communities in fear. Little did they know, Darren Vann was just the tip of the icebergs of their worst nightmares, a man who would leave an indelible mark on the souls of those who dared to cross his path, forever altering the fabric of their lives. In the shadowy depths of Gary, Indiana, a name that would become synonymous with terror echoed through the streets, a name that would shatter the tranquility of the once thriving city. Darren Vann, a man whose face would become a specter haunting the dreams of many, moved to Gary with the promise of a fresh start. But little did the townsfolk know, the enigmatic figure they welcomed into their midst harbored a dark past and a dangerous obsession. The clock struck midnight as Vann, a man whose life was a patchwork of odd jobs and fleeting relationships, strolled through the abandoned alleys of Gary, his eyes glinting with a sinister purpose. The city, long forgotten by the rest of the world, seemed to whisper secrets to him, secrets that would soon unravel its fragile peace. As he wandered deeper into the night, a series of chilling events began to unfold, events that would paint Darren Vann as the architect of nightmares, a serial killer whose reign of terror would leave a lasting scar on the soul of Gary, forever altering the lives of those who dared to cross his path. In the heart of Gary, Indiana, where the steel mills once roared and the rivers whispered tales of yore, there lay a house that stood as a silent sentinel, its windows etched with the shadows of countless nights. Deon Vann, a man whose name would become synonymous with dread, moved into this decrepit abode with a promise of a fresh start. Little did he know that the house would become his grim epitaph. The neighborhood whispered of its eerie past, tales of mysterious disappearances and unexplained phenomena that had long since faded from the local folklore. As Darren settled in, he found himself drawn to the house's dark charm, a magnet for the sinister and the forgotten. One fateful evening, as the city slumbered under a shroud of fog, Darren's quiet life took a sinister turn, and the true horror of the Gary serial killer began to unfold, casting a chilling legacy that would forever stain the town's memory.